Hello, Packers fans. Welcome into PackersNews.com. I'm Kassidy Hill here from Lambeau Field, where we are about an hour and 15 minutes away from kickoff for the Packers' second preseason game of the year. This one versus the New England Patriots. I see people are coming in, so I'm going to give y'all a couple of seconds here or a few more seconds here to get in before we really get started. But as I said, here for second week of preseason, Packers came away with a win in their first week of the preseason. But of course, in the preseason, the scores are really not what's important. It's more about the individual performances, and that's what we're looking for again here tonight. We expect Jordan Love to play. How long will always be the question. He played 2 drives in the first week versus the Cincinnati Bengals. He led a drive that ended in a punt and then a drive that ended in a touchdown. Then he came out, and then Sean Clifford got a huge bulk of reps for the rest of the game. Alex Magoo, I think, with only 3 drives at the end of the game. While we do expect to see Jordan Love tonight, it's going to be more so about, are these drives more evenly split between Clifford and Magoo as the Packers really kind of get a look at both backup quarterbacks. Although that being said, everything taken into consideration from the first preseason game and then every week of training camp so far, it looks like Sean Clifford sort of has this backup quarterback spot locked in for the Packers. Had the 2 interceptions and then came back from it to lead a touchdown drive in a 2-minute drill versus the Bengals, and really was able to pick apart the Patriots' second and third team defense in practice this week. You take that with a grain of salt, of course. It's the second and third team, but had a couple of 2-minute drives that really were impressive during the 2 joint practices. That being said, Packers did have 2 joint practices against the Patriots this week, and having that second joint practice can really make a world of difference. It allows you to do some more drills. It allows you to balance the days a little bit better. And it can also lead to a few more fights as the tension gets high. We'll get into that here in the next couple of minutes. But before we do, let's kind of spend a couple of minutes on Jordan Love. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. I'll try to answer them as best I can here before we get started. But Jordan Love spoke earlier this week just about the benefit he has by being able to face the Patriots for 2 days in a row, and not only the Patriots, but a Bill Belichick coach defense, and what that can do for him and to teach him as a young quarterback. Let's actually hear from Jordan on what it was like to face Bill Belichick's defense twice this week.
Obviously, I think there were some good things, and then I think there's things we need to clean up. Throws I wish I could have back, reads I wish I had back. But like I said, never get too high, never get too low. So just learn from it, grow from it, look at the day, and then come back out ready to go tomorrow.
Was there anything they threw at you that maybe you weren't expecting or had not yet prepared for?
No, I think they mix up a lot of looks. They do a really good job of that. They threw a couple all-outs at us today, which is something that we need a lot of work at, and just continue to keep growing with that. But I think they should do a really good job of mixing up looks, disguising, cover 2, man, all out, things like that.
How did they sort of the reason early Jordan were throwing checkdowns a little bit, were you kind of getting used to what they were doing in the beginning? Like the first second series?
No, just playing to play out. I mean, I think they had some good coverage on some of the concepts we ran early, credit to them. But I think just continue to work through progressions, find those checkdowns. I mean, I think we get some good yards right there on some of those checkdowns.
What'd you see on the deep one to Christian, the 75-yard touchdown, where he came across? And
yeah. I mean, we just ran a good concept right there. I was pretty much just looking at Rome come across on the left side, and the DB hesitated a little bit and gave me the chance to be able to hit Christian over the top on a field post. It's just a concept we run a lot. We haven't had any success hitting the field post yet this year, so that was actually the first one we hit. So it's fun to hit that for the first time.
Does Matt emphasize those checkdowns a lot with you? How much does he emphasize those checkdowns?
I think it's really just going through the progression. And for me, it's not trying to force something that's not there. That's what I'm trying to continue to keep working on, because in my past I might try and force the ball in there when I don't need to. So just continue to play the play out, work through my reads. And like I said, a couple of those ones early, they had cover. They had good coverage on it.
So we heard there from Jordan Love on his week versus the Patriots. I think what's interesting about Love in these joint practices versus the Bengals and then versus the Patriots is you will see him at times perhaps struggle with something, and then figured out a way around it. He seems to come back the next drill and have the answer. That being said, there's still lots of things for him to figure out his first time starting in the NFL, but has to be encouraging for Matt LaFleur and the coaches to see that he at least has the ability to quickly problem solve and address the issue, whatever it may be, from time to time. As I said, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. We will get them posted here as we continue on through our pregame show. The 75-yard field post that he mentioned to Christian Watson was arguably the play of the week for the Packers in joint practice, and probably one of Jordan Love's best plays so far in this preseason. It was just a beautiful throw. As soon as he let it out of his hand, you start to question if there was too much air on it. And as my colleague Tom Silverstein said this week, you can never put too much air on a ball to Christian Watson. He's always going to be able to catch up and get to it. And that's exactly what happened. If you have a minute, go over to PackersNews.com. Not right now, but after we're done, go to PackersNews.com or go to Milwaukee Journal sitting on YouTube. You can watch our most recent edition of Chalk Talk with Christian Watson with an assist from Jordan Love, breaking down that play and explaining why it can be difficult to hit and why he and Jordan have started to figure each other out when it comes to that play and having success with that deep ball. Rebecca asked, does Jordan look like he is handling the blitz better? Yes. And the reason I hesitate has nothing to do with him, but more so just because during practices, the blitz is never going to truly be what it would be in a game. And I think even last week with the Bengals, we saw they didn't really blitz him much. And it's really going to be into the season before he sees full live reps with a blitz, because even when the reps are quote unquote live and full speed in practice, they're never really full speed. And so yes, but with the caveat that it needs to be seen in a game, and that's still to come for Love. A couple other things that came out of practice this week with the Patriots, of course, would be the fights. That was on the second day of practice. There are always going to be fights on the second day of a joint practice. That's not uncommon. It's pretty much expected. It's just, going into it, especially for coaches, that it's going to happen. This week, though, between the Packers and the Patriots, there were 7 fights on that second day. There might have actually been more. I lost count at 7. And to have 7 is when you start thinking, okay, things might have gotten a little out of hand. But I think it was more so one beget another, beget another, beget another. There was a period of time where 4 fights broke out in the span of 9 snaps. They couldn't hardly get a snap off. However, you never want that to happen. However, there is something to be said for a young team with a young, untested offense learning how to stand up for themselves, and that is the balance there, the good and the bad of those fights, so to speak. And none of them were bad. There was, I think, only a punch swung one time. But in a way, there was something that they wanted to see when those fights broke out that I think the Packers offense was pleased. And I'm not explaining it very well. So let's actually hear from the guys who are part of it on these skirmishes that popped up this week versus the Patriots and the good, bad, and reasons behind it.
I mean, yesterday we was told to two-hand tag off, but when we watched tape, I'm clearly guessing that they was told something different. So yesterday they were kind of getting away with a lot of stuff that like we not really with. Like if we all on the same page, we all playing by these same rules, that need to be the rule. If it's all two-hand touch, guys shouldn't be getting thudded and trying to get killed to the ground. Like that's all unnecessary.
I mean, I don't think anything necessarily crossed the line in terms of what was being said back and forth. I think at the end of the day, I think that there just needs to be some more structure in terms of the rules that are laid out for practice. Whether it's thud, touch, letting guys finish. I mean, if they're going to go out there and not let guys finish, and it's going to lead to something. If we're going out there and doing the same thing, then obviously it's going to lead to something. So that's got to be on the same page in terms of how we're finishing plays.
Was today thud or was today two-hand touch?
Today it started off two-hand touch until people started doing a little extra, and then everybody was like, all right, we about to start fitting all these gaps real hard, and then it started slowing down.
It's obviously a physical game, and so it's hard to, kind of draw that fine line between what's too much and what's a lot, especially when you got people who don't necessarily have exactly the same practices. It can definitely get tough. So, there's a lot of that, and there's kind of gray area, and things can stem from that. It's also an emotional game. People get, fired up, and so, I'm proud of the way that our guys responded for the most part, and our guys rallied around each other and finished out practice.
You got to set the standard and what we want it to look like and what we're going to be and our mentality. And we're not going to back down from anybody. Excuse my language. We're going to be unwithable. Excuse my language, sorry. But yeah, just having that mentality where nobody can mess with you and we all got each other's back.
We kind of cool with them doing. We need to see that from them.
Why do you need to see that from them?
Because we just want to make sure they tough, So that's cool. Like, we like that. I like that. Like, I like when Ellen told me he was over there fighting. I was like, shit, that's good.
I could definitely say I was in the middle of one, but after that, definitely just kind of de-escalated so we could get back to practice. But I think that competitiveness is needed. It definitely lifts everybody's spirits and they're ready to compete.
Was it kind of a point of pride, like, hey, we're not going to lay down?
Nah, we ain't doing that. We ain't doing that. If y'all want to play those extra stuff, we can be extra.
I don't think that anyone's saying that's what we should be doing, or at the end of the day, we're there to play football and practice, not do all that extracurricular stuff. But it's good to see that we have some chippiness. We just got to learn how to keep it under control.
I expected we did. We came out here to get better. I believe Green Bay wanted to get better, and I believe the Patriots wanted to get better. We don't put gloves on for a living. We know boxers, we know fighters. We came out here to get better and improve in our craft. And if any of that would have happened during the game, we all would have been kicked out. We've been playing with 17 players, right? So you can't. That stuff can't happen. You got to be a professional about it, and we came here to play football, and that's where we eventually got to.
And I think the biggest thing is just, making sure our guys are good, going and finding our guys, and, obviously we got their back firstly, but then, just making sure, if this is a real game situation, let's make sure everybody's still going to be able to be in the game, so kind of de-escalate it.
As you heard there from the guys, never what you want to have in a practice, but some good to be taken from the 7 fights that occurred between the Packers and Patriots this week in joint practice. Anytime Aaron Jones gets involved, that it's gotten a little intense because he's usually the one that's calming everyone down, that's pulling guys away. And as he said there, they don't want to be messed with. He used a little bit more colorful language, but essentially said we want teams to know that we might have gotten punched in the mouth in the past, but it's not going to keep happening. I have a couple of other questions here. Amy, to that point, says such a young team, they definitely have the fire and energy now to just bring the fundamentals together. And I think that's what they're wanting to see, which is kind of what they saw a little bit this week. There was a time at one point when the Patriots went down and the Packers defense had been smack talking a little bit. And then Mac Jones led a 2-minute drive at the end of the game, needing a touchdown, and threw a bomb to Devontae Parker that went in for a touchdown. And that really quieted down the Packers sideline. And you kind of saw that same ho-hum attitude that maybe would have been there in the past when something like that happened. And then the second team offense came out, and Sean Clifford led a drive down that ended with Chris Kress getting into the end zone off a bobbled pass touchdown, really an improbable touchdown. But the entire offense came off the sideline to mob him in celebration. And that really gave a shot of energy back to the sideline and reminded them, hey, we can bounce back. It's not unheard of. Brett asked, very good question, who are the starting 5 on the offensive line going to be? Brett, no one knows. In fact, I don't even think the coaches know. offensive coordinator Adam Stanovich was asked about that on Friday, and he's like, it's still kind of up in the air, and a lot of that is because of Zach Tom. Zach Tom can play so many different positions. In practice alone, he has practiced at right tackle, center, left guard. Trying to make sure I said it. Yeah, right tackle, center, left guard. And he can play all three positions well. And so, because of that, it's a good problem to have if you're the Packers. There's uncertainty about where to put him. And that will, of course, have a domino effect along the rest of the line. Right now, in my opinion, the only two positions that are set are left tackle with David Bakhtiari and right guard with John Runyon. That the rest of those positions, those other three positions, and left tackle can also change if Bakhtiari has a game where he has to come out because of his knee. That being said, they seem to have really found the right groove with his practice schedule to get him to game day, so that shouldn't be an issue. But when he does come out, that's going to shift things as well. But right now, left tackle, right guard are the only two positions that are set. Where does Zach Tom go? That determines the rest of the line. It looks like it's going to be because, and I say left guard is not set simply because there are times if Bakhtiari has to come out that Elton Jenkins switches over to left tackle. That should be set as well, but Zach Tom still can play it. I think week 1 in Chicago, your starting five that goes out on the field will be David Bakhtiari at left tackle, Elton Jenkins at left guard, Josh Myers at center, John Runyon at right tackle. John Runyon at right guard, Zach Tom at right tackle. That could still change. And like I said, a lot of that depends on where they end up putting Zach Tom, because Zach Tom could also go in at center. And if he goes in at center, that changes right tackle to maybe Josh Nyman. And so it's still very much up in the air. That's who I think is going to be week 1. Like I said, Bakhtiari, Jenkins, Myers, Runyon, Tom. But that could still change, and it all depends on where Zach Tom plays, which it's a good thing. It's a good problem to have when you have too many offensive linemen. Right now, they could easily put a 53-man roster together that's 12 deep at offensive line, and maybe even 13. Wouldn't even be surprised if we saw some trades happen at offensive line. So we will wait and see. Brett, a different Brett, asked, what are the top 3 things to watch for tonight? I feel like backup quarterback's pretty set. So I would say I want to see who among the running backs continues to stand out, because if there's going to be a third running back spot on the roster, which is about a 50-50 shot, but if there is going to be one, those other 3 running backs all present something different. And none of them are necessarily the full package, which is why there are still questions around that spot. You have Tyler Goodson, who's really, really good and shifty out of the backfield and can also catch out of the backfield. Patrick Taylor is an incredible special teams player and a really incredible pass blocker. And then, as we saw last week, Emmanuel Wilson just has another speed that he can hit when he gets in the open field. And so all good aspects for a third running back, but none that necessarily have everything you want. Usually your third running back is someone that has to contribute on special teams and pass block, which is why they like Patrick Taylor there so much. But we have also seen Aaron Jones specifically work with Emmanuel Wilson on his pass blocking skills this week in practice. Do we see that progress tonight? Tyler Goodson has been in a arm sling all week, so I doubt he plays tonight. But what sort of progress do we see from Emmanuel Wilson with Patrick Taylor, who kind of solidifies himself in that spot if there's going to be a third running back on the roster, which, like I said, I still don't think that necessarily happens. And then beyond that, same thing sort of at receiver. There is a dearth of talent at receiver, of young talent at receiver, and there are a lot of spots on the bottom that are going to require some really, really hard decisions come August 29th, which is cut down day. You have Malik Keith, Grant DuBose, who's only had, I think, 5 practices because it took him a while to come back from a back injury, but has just shown out in those 5 practices. He had one of the best catches of the day on Thursday. And so and then, like I said, Malik Keith, the undrafted free agent rookie, Crest has had some big moments. Who else? You've got Samari Torrey has solidified himself as the 3/4. So I think that's fine. But there is so much talent at the bottom of that receiving core that some guys that are on the bubble are going to end up getting picked up by another team simply because the Packers can't roster them all. So who continues to stand out and separates themselves and makes that decision a little easier or harder for Brian Gutekunst is also going to be interesting. I can't remember if I said 2 or 3, but I will give you another one just in case. Going back to Brett's question about the offensive line, where does Zach Tom play? Yet again, and who's at center? Because we saw John Runyon at center last week versus the Bengals for really the first time ever. He had taken a few snaps in practice, but not a ton. Do they give him more reps at that position? That was an interesting move. Rebecca asked, any thoughts on safety besides Savage? Great question, Rebecca. No. Jonathan Owens seems to continue to be who runs with the ones. And so I would say it's his position to lose. However, he could lose it. He's a decent tackler, which is huge, but he's not great in coverage from what we've seen. I could be very wrong there, but I think we see more to Various Moore again tonight, just to see if he can sort of complement Savage a little bit better. Rudy Ford is still on this roster and was a serviceable starting safety for the Packers last season. He's who ran with the first team defense for the entire first week of training camp. So we keep talking about Owens and Moore, but don't forget about Rudy Ford as well. He's someone who could still come in and take that other starting safety spot next to Darnell Savage. Well, I can hear them shooting the fireworks off above the press box here, which is where we're at tonight, which is I'm thankful for because it is humid out on that field tonight, and windy. The wind is going to make Andres Carlson tonight interesting yet again. But if he's going to continue to be a Packers kicker, he's going to have to learn how to kick in Lambeau Field with the wind. So good practice for the rookie kicker. That being said, fireworks going off, that's usually my cue to go ahead and start getting ready, get settled, because it won't be long before the guys are out for warm-ups. Tom Silverstein has his live blog going for you on PackersNews.com. Make sure to watch that and participate. Leave your questions. He'll answer them as the game goes on. And then we will have a wrap-up coverage for you from the Packers' second week preseason game. Full wrap-up coverage. Matt LaFleur will meet with us tomorrow at 3:30. So we'll have coverage from that as well, and then take another day off before we come back for the final week of preseason. Till next time, guys, thanks so much.